One rainy day, my tormentor had ordered me to come to the Bergplatz. I was standing there, waiting and rooting around, with my foot in the wet chestnut leaves that were still falling every now and then from the black, dripping wet trees. I didn't have any money, but had set aside 2 slices of cake and brought them with me so that at least I could give Cromer something. I had long since gotten used to standing on a corner somewhere, waiting for him, often for a long time. I accepted it the way one always accepts, the inevitable. Finally, Cromer arrived. He didn't stay long. He nudged me in the ribs a couple times, laughed, took the cake, even offered me a wet cigarette, which I didn't take, and was friendlier than usual. Right, he said when he was leaving. I almost forgot. Next time you can bring your sister with you, the older one. What's her name again? I didn't understand him at all and said nothing. I just stared at him in amazement. Don't you get it? Your sister. Bring her with you. Yes, Cromer, but that's impossible. I can't. And she wouldn't come anyway. I thought this must be another one of his bullying tricks. He used to do that a lot, demand something impossible, scare me, humiliate me, and eventually strike some kind of deal. I had to pay some kind of penalty, money or another offering, for not doing whatever it was. This time it was different. When I refused, he almost didn't get mad at me at all. Well, he said casually, you'll think it over. I'd like to meet that sister of yours. It's not hard. You can just take her with you on a little walk, and then I'll show up. I'll whistle for you tomorrow, and we'll discuss it again then. After he left, an idea of what he wanted suddenly dawned on me. I was still a complete child, but I had heard hints and rumors that when boys and girls were a little older, they could do some kind of mysterious, indecent, forbidden things with each other. And so now I was supposed to, all of a sudden, it was crystal clear to me how monstrous it was. I immediately knew that I would never do it. But what would happen next? How Cromer would take revenge on me? I hardly dared think about it. A new anguish had begun, as if I had not yet been through enough. I was inconsolable and walked off across the empty square, hands in my pockets. New tortures, new enslavements. Then a lively, deep voice called my name. I was startled and set off at a run. Someone ran after me, and a hand grabbed me gently from behind. It was Max Demian. I let myself be caught. It's you, I said, unsure of myself. You scared me. He looked at me, and never before was his gaze more like that of an adult, a superior being who could see right through me. We had not talked to each other for a long time by that point. Sorry, he said in his polite but at the same time firm way, but you shouldn't get scared like that. Yes, well, it happens sometimes. Apparently it does, but look, if you flinch like that at someone who hasn't done anything to you, he'll start to think. He'll be surprised. It'll make him curious. This person will think it's strange how jumpy you are, and then he'll think people are like that only when they're afraid. Cowards are scared of everything, but I don't actually think you're a coward, are you? Oh, I know you're not a hero either. There are things you're afraid of. There are people you're scared of too. But that's not right. We should never be scared of anyone. You're not scared of me, are you? Or are you? Oh, no, not at all. There, you see. But there are people you're scared of. I don't know. Leave me alone. What do you want from me? He kept pace with me. I had started walking faster, thinking I might get away, and I felt him give me a sidelong look. He started again. You can assume I mean well. Either way, there's no reason for you to be scared of me. I want to try an experiment with you. It's fun, and you might learn something very useful from it. Listen closely. I sometimes try to do something that people call mind reading. There's nothing magic about it, but if you don't know how it's done, it can seem very mysterious. People sometimes find it quite a shock. Okay, let's try it. I like you, or I find you interesting, and so I want to bring to the surface your inner way of seeing things. I've taken the first step already. I scared you, which means you're jumpy. So there must be things and people you are afraid of. Now, why? There's no reason to be afraid of anyone. If someone is afraid of another person, it's because he has given this person some kind of power over him. For example, maybe he's done something bad and the other person knows it, then he has power over you. You follow? That's perfectly clear, right? I looked him in the face, helpless. His face was as serious and intelligent as ever, and also well meaning, but without the slightest gentleness. If anything, it was severe. Justice, or something similar, lay in that face. I didn't understand what was happening to me. He stood there like a magician. Do you follow? He asked again. I nodded. I couldn't say a word. I told you it seems mysterious, this mind reading, but it's perfectly natural. I could also tell you pretty precisely what you thought about me when I told you about Cain and Abel, for example, but that's another topic. I also think you might have dreamed about me once or twice, but enough of that. You're a clever boy. Most of them are so stupid. I like to talk to a clever boy once in a while, someone I trust. That's all right with you, isn't it? Oh, yes, but I don't understand how. Let's stay with our fun experiment. So, we've discovered that young S is jumpy. He is scared of someone, and this someone probably knows an uncomfortable secret about him. Is that more or less right? It was like in my dream. I was under his influence, overpowered by his voice. I only nodded. Wasn't he speaking in a voice that could just as well have come from within myself? That knew everything better and more clearly that I knew it myself? Demian gave me a sturdy clap on the shoulder. So, that's how it is. I thought so. Now, just one question. Do you know the name of the boy who left the square here before you? I was startled and shaken. He had touched on my secret. It shriveled up painfully inside me, not wanting to come out into the light. What boy? There wasn't anyone else, just me. He laughed. Just say it, he laughed. What's his name? I whispered. You mean Franz Cromer? He gave me a satisfied nod. Bravo! You're a quick one. We'll be good friends yet. But now I have something to tell you. This Cromer, or whatever his name is a bad person. I can tell from his face that he's a scoundrel. What do you think? I heaved a sigh. Oh, yes, he is bad. He is the devil. But he can't find out anything about this. For God's sake, he can't find out. Do you know him? Does he know you? Calm down. He's gone, and he doesn't know me. Not yet. But I would very much like to meet him. He goes to the public school. Yes. Which grade? Fifth grade. But don't tell him anything. Please, please, don't say anything. Don't worry. Nothing will happen to you. I presume you don't feel like telling me a little about this, Cromer. I can't. No, leave me alone. He was silent for a while. Too bad, he said. We could have taken our experiment a little further, but I don't want to upset you. But you already know this fear of him isn't right, don't you? Such fear just destroys us. We have to break free of it. You have to break free of it, or you will never be all right. Do you understand that? Of course. You're totally right, but it's impossible. You don't know. You've seen that I know some things more than you would have thought. Do you owe him money? Yes, that too, but that's not the main thing. I can't say it, I can't. So it wouldn't help if I gave you the money you owe him. I could easily do that. No, no, it's not that. And please don't tell anyone, not a word. That would be the worst thing that could happen to me. Trust me, Sinclair. Eventually, you will tell me the secret you share with him. Never! Never! I shouted. As you wish. I only mean that maybe you will decide on your own to tell me someday. Of your own free will, obviously. You don't think I would act like Cromer does? Oh, no, but you don't know anything about how he acts. Not a thing. I'm just thinking it through. And I'll never do the kind of thing Cromer does, believe me, and you don't owe me anything anyway. We were quiet for a long time, and I calmed down, but Demian's knowledge grew more and more mysterious to me. I'm going home now, he said, and he pulled his Loddon coat tighter around him to keep out the rain. There's only one thing I want to tell you, since we've already come this far. You need to break free of him. If there's nothing else you can do, then kill him. I would be impressed if you did, and happy. I'd even help you. I felt scared again. I suddenly remembered the story of Cain, and it was all too sinister for me. And I started to whimper. There was too much uncanniness everywhere around me. All right, Max Deeming smiled. Just go home. We'll take care of it. Killing him would be simplest, though, and in situations like this, the simplest thing is always the best. You are not in good hands with your friend Cromer. I arrived back at home, and it felt like I had been away for a year. Everything looked different. There was something standing between me and Cromer now, something like a future, like hope. I was no longer alone. Only then did I realize how terribly alone I had been with my secret for all those weeks and weeks. Right away, what I had thought about so many times before came to mind again. What a relief it would be to confess to my parents, but that it would not resolve everything. Now I had practically confessed to someone else, to an outsider, and a sense of relief came over me like a sweet, strong breeze. All the same, I was far from overcoming my fear, and was still prepared for long and terrible confrontations with my enemy. That made it all the more remarkable that everything proceeded so peacefully, in complete secrecy and calm. Cromer's whistle in front of our house simply failed to materialize. For a day, then for 2 days, 3 days, a week. I couldn't believe it. And secretly, I was waiting for him to suddenly show up again after all, just when I least expected it. But he was gone, once and for all. I didn't trust this new freedom and still did not truly believe it until finally I ran into Franz Cromer himself. He was walking down Seilergasse straight toward me. When he saw me, he flinched, twisted his face with a wild grimace, and turned around on the spot to avoid me. That was an incredible moment. My enemy fleeing from me? My Satan afraid of me? Surprise and joy flooded through my heart. Demian turned up. He was waiting for me in front of the school. Hello, I said. Good morning, Sinclair. I wanted to hear how you're doing. Cromer's leaving you alone now, isn't he? Did you do it? But how? How? I don't understand. He's totally gone. That's good. If he ever comes back, I don't think he will, but he's quite a scoundrel. Then just tell him to remember Demian. But what's the connection? Did you start a fight and beat him up? No, I don't like to do that. I just talked to him, the same way I talked to you. I was able to make him see that leaving you alone was to his own advantage. Oh, you didn't give him any money, did you? No, my boy. You already tried that approach yourself. He dodged the question no matter how hard I tried to find out what had happened. I was left with the same awkward feeling toward him, a strange mix of gratitude and shyness, admiration and fear, affection and inner resistance. I decided to see him again soon. I walked. I wanted to talk more with him about everything, including Cain. It didn't happen. Gratitude in general is not a virtue I believe in, and it seems wrong to me to demand it from a child. So the complete lack of gratitude I showed to Max Demian does not surprise me all that much. I am absolutely certain today that if he hadn't freed me from Cromer's clutches, my health and, in fact, my whole life would have been ruined. Even at the time, I felt that this liberation was the greatest event of my young life, but I completely ignored the liberator himself as soon as he had performed the miracle. Ingratitude, as I said, is not something that needs explaining as far as I am concerned. The only thing I find hard to understand is the lack of curiosity I showed. How could I let a single day go by without trying to learn the secret of how Demian had saved me? How could I rein in my craving to hear more about Cain, more about Cromer, more about mind reading? It is almost impossible to believe, and yet it was so. I suddenly found myself freed from a demonic net and saw the world bright and joyous before me. I no longer suffered from panic attacks and a pounding heart that almost made me throw up. The spell had been broken. I was not a tormented soul in hell, but just a schoolboy again, like before. My nature wanted to regain its equilibrium as quickly as it could, which more than anything meant turning away from all the ugliness and danger I had been through and trying to forget it. With marvelous speed, the whole long tale of guilt and terror slipped from my mind, without leaving behind any apparent scars or traces. The fact that I tried to forget my helper and savior just as quickly makes sense to me now, too. I was fleeing with all the force and might of my damaged soul from my vale of tears and damnation, from Cromer's terrible enslavement, back to where I had earlier been happy and content, the paradise lost that had opened its gates to me once more, the bright world of father and mother, of my sisters, back to the scent of purity, to Abel pleasing in the sight of God. The very day after my short conversation with Demian, before I was fully convinced my freedom had been won back at last, and I did not need to fear any relapse, I did what I had longed so desperately and so often to do. I confessed. I went to my mother and showed her the little money box with the broken lock, filled with play money instead of real coins, and I told her how my own guilt had put me in an evil tormentor's clutches for so long. She did not understand everything I said, but she saw the box and saw my changed look, heard my changed voice, and felt that the trial was over, that I had been returned to her. Then began the emotional celebration of my coming back into the fold, the return of the prodigal son. Mother took me to see father. The story was repeated. Questions and cries of amazement poured forth. Both my parents stroked my head and sighed deeply, free at last of their long dejection. Everything was wonderful, just like in the stories. Everything was resolved into magnificent harmony. I fled into that harmony with true passion. I could not get enough of enjoying my peace and the trust of my parents once more. I was a model child around the house, played more with my sisters than ever before, and felt redeemed as I sang the dear old hymns during prayer with all the fervor of a convert. All these feelings came from the heart. There was no deception involved. And yet everything wasn't all right. Not at all. This is the only true explanation for why I forgot Demian. I should have confessed to him. That confession would have been less ornamental and moving, but more fruitful for me. Instead, I was clinging with all my might to the paradisiacal world where I had once belonged. I had come home and been received with mercy. But Demian did not belong to that world in any way, and he could not be made to fit into it. He, too, differently from Cromer, but nonetheless, was a tempter. He, too, was a link between me and the other world, wicked and bad, which I now wanted nothing more ever to do with. I could not and did not want to renounce Abel and glorify Cain. now that I had just turned back into an Abel again myself. That was my external situation. The inner circumstances, though, were these. I had been redeemed from Cromer's and the devil's hands, but not through any power or act of my own. I had tried to walk along the paths of the world, and they had proven too slippery for me. And now that a friendly hand had reached out and saved me, I ran straight back, without looking left or right, into Mother's lap, back to the safety of a pious, sheltered childhood world. I made myself younger, more dependent, and more childish than I really was. I had to replace my dependence on Cromer with a new one because I was unable to walk alone. So I chose, in my blind heart, dependence on father and mother, on the old beloved world of light, even though I already knew it was not the only one. If I hadn't made that choice, I would have had to cling to Demian and put my faith in him. At the time, I thought I was unwilling to do so out of a justified mistrust of his outlandish ideas. In truth, it was out of nothing but fear. For Demian would have asked more of me than my parents did, much more. He would have tried to make me more independent, with provocations and warnings, mockery and irony. Alas, I now know only too well that there is nothing in the world more hateful to a person than walking the path that leads to himself. Still, 6 months or so later, I could not resist temptation, and on a walk with my father, I asked him what to make of the fact that some people thought Cain was better than Abel. He was very surprised by the question. He explained to me that this interpretation was in no way new. It had emerged already in the earliest centuries of Christianity and been taught in various sects, one of which called itself the Cainites. But obviously, he said, this insane teaching was nothing but the devil's attempt to destroy our faith. For if you believe that Cain was in the right and Abel in the wrong, then it follows that God was in error. Or, in other words, that the God of the Bible is not the one true God, but a false God. Cainites and similar sects did, in fact, teach and preach such a doctrine, but this heresy had long since vanished from the earth. The only thing that puzzled him was that a schoolmate of mine had heard something about it. In any case, he warned me in grave earnest to refrain from all such thoughts.